Good afternoon. Welcome to the Skull Session Recruiting Podcast, brought to you by BuckeyeHuddle.com. This is our Monday afternoon live show. I'm Mark Givler, got Kevin Noon here. As usual, interesting weekend in recruiting. Buckeyes hosted a couple of official visitors, a couple of surprise visitors, one in 2025, one in 2026. The big news of the weekend, obviously, is the David Sanders Jr. visit, the five-star offensive lineman, number one tackle in the country, maybe the number one player in the country, depending who you ask. Committed to Tennessee over Ohio State and a few others in August. Back on campus this weekend in a visit that nobody really saw coming because he hasn't visited anywhere since committing to Tennessee in August other than Tennessee. So I guess, Kevin, you were there. What was your when you saw Big Dave go through the tunnel? That had to be an interesting moment.
It was. I'd heard about it maybe 45 minutes earlier. So I'm like, well, I guess I know who I'm looking for at this point. And then lo and behold, he comes out and it's like, well, this business trip at this point. Ohio State, had some big names on there, but none bigger here than David Sanders, an obvious position of need moving forward and really every year. But, we've had the chance to get to know David through multiple visits, through Southern Swing, everything else. Really great kid, hard not to pull for him. But, with a visit that went more than, it wasn't just an up and back. I mean, he was here in Columbus a little bit longer than that. So, I think everything is trending in a decent direction. But, what we always say about visits, let's let the afterglow wear off and kind of see where things are. But in a star-studded visitor room, I mean, that certainly was the biggest one.
Yeah, this was interesting. This wasn't a trip to just like see a game and like have fun. There were other opportunities to do that. You could have done it even this weekend for the Michigan game. This was clearly a business trip. This was clearly a serious visit. Everyone I've talked to, said, look, the kid hasn't visited anywhere else. So it's not like he's, some guys commit and then they still take a whole bunch of visits. He hasn't done that. This is the only visit that he has taken so far that wasn't to Tennessee. So that in itself is kind of raises some eyebrows. But what I'm wondering is the conversations. Obviously, you're going to have conversations about development. You're going to have conversations about NIL. I wonder how much the conversation.
Mark lost his mic, so all right. There you go. I just was trying to make sure.
The conversation was about Josh Simmons and his NFL draft status, and not only just Josh Simmons' development at Ohio State and how he's sort of come from this guy that people were kind of almost mocking at the beginning of his career when they took him from San Diego State, and everyone was like, oh, why are you taking a kid from San Diego State? And now he's at a point where he's going to be a high draft pick. But on top of that, just what he's going to do in terms of his NFL future, and if that left tackle spot is actually going to be an open competition in the spring. And that would be something that obviously would be an additional plus to the package with NIL and everything else that goes on is the opportunity to compete as a freshman for an open position.
Yeah, I mean, remember when Josh Simmons was, being talked about and then committed to Ohio State, everybody's like, well, his PFF grades are terrible. Well, he was in the offensive line is a position that your grade kind of reflects the grade of the guy next to you as well, because, the line, kind of has to act as a unit. He also was probably not getting as developed at San Diego State. Apologies to the Aztecs, but that's just the reality. And, the first couple games he had at Ohio State weren't very good, but he, quickly became Ohio State's most solid lineman for good stretches of the year. So I think that you go to David Sanders and you're like, look, here's the development. We're on our fourth offensive line of this season. We're on our fourth line. And outside of that Nebraska game, I think the Nebraska game is the only one I'd be like, ugh, that didn't work. But everything else has worked pretty well. So, just talk about how how this could really salvage the reputation that Justin Fry has with a lot of Ohio State fans if they're able to make this flip and land him and put him in a class with with Carter Lowe and Jake Cook, and what they can do there, stacking it with the previous class of even more and the Armstrong twins. I mean, Ohio State probably still is going to need some immediate help on the line after the departures from this season, but I think that the room is starting to fill in with more guys who I would say are capable of playing at Ohio State.
Yeah. And so, I know people are going to be talking about, can David Sanders play as a true freshman? I think he can play. Do you want it, if he flips, would you want him to be the odds-on favorite going into spring? No, you wouldn't. You would want to bring in somebody. You would want it to be a situation very much like Jeremiah Smith, where he has to come in and kind of kick the door down and not just be the default guy. But I think he's a guy, certainly can be on your 2-deep year one, and we'll see. Like I say, if I'm never going to pencil in a true freshman offensive tackle. I'm just never going to. But I think if ever there was a left tackle that was created that could maybe do that, I think David Sanders is as good of a pick for that as anybody. Certainly a special player. So I think the way Ohio State's offensive lines performed this year, despite the barrage of injuries, I think the way Ohio State is trending right now as a team, I think the way the depth chart sets up, and I think the way that, Ohio State has generally embraced David into the culture, I think there's been a lot of things going in their favor there. Tennessee was the first offer. Tennessee was obviously a closer school geographically to Columbus, but I don't know. I don't think he makes this visit unless he thinks there's a good chance in his mind he's going to flip. And so there's optimism there right now for Ohio State. I think if I had to guess, I would guess they flip him. But we'll see. And I know we're getting questions about Damola Aji-Dahun from the Georgia Tech commit. I think this latest Sanders visit is super interesting because we started hearing, it's really been the last week or two that things looked like maybe they were trending back toward Georgia Tech keeping him. That lines up very much with the timeline on when the David Sanders visit started to become a possibility inside the Woody. So it feels to me like if they get David Sanders, they'll probably just stop at tackle. Like I think
they'll go people in the corner and be happy with
right.
It.
Yeah. Like I don't, what I'm almost certain was relayed to him this weekend is like, if you're in, then we're out on the other offensive linemen, in this class. So that would be my guess as kind of what we're seeing right now is there's significant optimism around David Sanders. And again, the thing I think we can't forget about here is the relationship with Paris Johnson. And that has obviously continued even when David was committed to Tennessee and kind of went quiet on Ohio State. And I just think that's something that's really facilitated or kind of been the bridge here that was able to kind of connect everybody to get this visit to happen. That's been a huge thing. So we'll see. Tennessee has some time to respond here. December 4th, we're still 9 days away. If my math is correct. So there's time here. Can they get him on campus? Can they, figure something else out? Can they come up with a Godfather NIL offer? Time for things to move the other back toward Tennessee here. But I think there's a lot of optimism right now from the people I talk to, and just knowing how this recruitment has played out and kind of how they've operated on the Sanders end of things. This visit doesn't happen Like if he's 80% sure he's going to Tennessee, I still don't think this visit happens. Like I think this visit only happens if he's like got a feeling that maybe Ohio State's the place. So
Well, and remember too, I mean, he wants to be like an orthopedic surgeon or something after football. So Ohio State's med school plays a pretty good role in this, and I think it was just a good opportunity on campus to get the full academic presentation once again, and everything else that's there. And that's just one thing that, sure, you can offer NIL dollars to a kid, but if there's something that they really want to specialize in, I mean, and he's going to specialize in football, he's going to be a tremendous football player, but the NFL stands for not for long, and careers are getting shorter and shorter at a lot of positions if you're drawing a lot of hits and everything else. So I think that Ohio State really has been able to maintain this process, and it's like it's a 40-year decision, and I like where Ohio State stands. I know that there's some rumors floating around that he might be back this upcoming weekend for the game. If he's there for the game, then
it's over at that point.
You may as well start looking for his apartment while you're at it. I mean, because that's what I'm going to take there. I'm going to start writing the story at that very moment.
Yeah. So everything's moving to me in the right direction. Again, there's 9 days for Tennessee to get this back going toward their direction and holding on to him. But I don't know. That was a pretty drastic move on the Sanders camp's part to do this based on their other activity or lack thereof the prior 3 months. So more news from the weekend. We'll get to some of the other stuff going on. I know we got the questions queued up, and we are going to have to keep this very close to an hour because it's Michigan week. If you guys didn't know, there's a lot of stuff going on right now. I got some stuff I'm writing up for the site right now, and we have some other recordings we have to do. So like we're going to get this rolling here as soon as possible so we can get this done in under an hour. But Jordan Woods made his official visit. Final decision, whatever you want to call it, could come any day now. My stance has been that Ohio State's going to flip him. I think that's the case. I don't have much to add there. I've been pretty, animate that Jordan Woods is going to flip. So I still feel that way. Visit went well. They'll take him. I don't have anything else to really, I'm saying as much as I can here. I mean, I can't really go any further than I've gone there. So that's where that one's at. Aiden West offered on the visit, Michigan State commit. If you read my skull session on the website last night, I think this is something they felt they had to do given how name offered situation is right now. The fact that they may not even know until signing day what he's going to do. I think they feel like they were kind of backed into a corner on this where the extra scholarships will give them the flexibility to take all three of these guys if that's how it plays out. But they can't be sitting there on December 4th finding out they're not getting name offered and they haven't really replaced him because Woods isn't replacing Offord. Woods is like an additional guy they really liked and was kind of more so had more to say about maybe like where things were at with like guys with McNutt and Brew and just some other, other targets. And they've wanted another defensive back, another corner in this class since Blake would be decommitted. So like that was kind of baked in already. I think the West thing is more of a, we can't get caught here on signing day. Especially given how many corners they may lose after this year. Before we even talk about anything with the transfer portal, which I don't have anyone in the transfer portal right now, but you're going to lose 2-3 corners after this year. If you include Jordan Hancock, you're probably going to lose 3 in my opinion, plus any attrition. So they have to combat against that from a numbers perspective, and we'll see where it goes. But as we tie that in with Alford, Kevin, it feels like this should have been shut down by now. Like he's had his visits, he's done all the. It just doesn't feel great right now.
No, it doesn't. And there are the experts out there that are predicting the flip. I mean, whether it's Auburn or Oregon or wherever. When he came out and said that he was going to make his decision on signing day, generally that doesn't bode well. I mean, I'm not going to say that I know what the percentage is of it boding, being good and being bad, but if he was done, I mean, he could have just said, well, I'm done. But you want to take it all the way to signing day. I'm not ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, again, some people saying that he's going to Auburn. Maybe. I mean, just like Tennessee has 9 days or whatever to try and deprogram David Sanders and everything that he's learned at Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State's got 9 days to sit there and try and keep Naeem Offord, and he is too talented of a kid to just say, screw it. We'll just let him go. I mean, you're not going to do that with a top 10 national type of player, your number 1 or your number 2 corner in the nation, depending on if you have it Sanchez Offord or Offord Sanchez. One thing I will say for sure, Ohio State is going to be fine with this cornerback recruiting. Devin Sanchez is just a freak. Not ready to necessarily put him in the Jeremiah Smith category, because I think that's like, we talk about generational players, which are never one in every 20 years. It's like, Ohio State had generational defensive ends back to back to back. But Jeremiah Smith, like, legitimately is a once in every 20 year, once in every 40 year type of player. They just, he does not exist. I mean, Devin Sanchez is everything you want in the corner, but Ohio State's going to try like hell to keep Naeem Offord. And, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. As I've said before, I'm surprised they kind of hung on this long. This is kind of what I expected in terms of chaos, but it is what it is at this point. You're down to the wire, and you do whatever you can to keep him, but it feels like there's been a lot of chances for him to like go visit, and he's done the visits and still hasn't shut it down. So we'll see. And I think a big thing, as Drowsy Dragon points out, is Offord coming to the game or not. We don't know yet. We'll find out, probably later this week. A big thing.
When you see it.
Right.
Whether he shows up here.
Right. If he said yes or no right now, what would it really mean anyway? With 5 days out.
I don't know where the Auburn-Alabama game is going to be this year. I don't know if it's in Tuscaloosa or in Auburn, but, if he shows up down there, that's a bad sign.
Yeah. I mean, a thing to watch here down the stretch, especially with 25, 26 isn't quite so much, but with 25 is who is where on Saturday, because it's rivalry week across the country. So who is where? Does David Sanders, come back up? Where's Naeem Offord going to be? Those are all pretty good tells at this point, especially when, again, signing day is the 4th. It's like 2 weeks early this year. So it's like right after the weekend games. So we're gonna be keeping a close eye on that, obviously, and that's gonna be a big thing. Is who is visiting where, and what can that tell us? So we'll be keeping an eye on that all week. All right, what do we got here?
We're going to the queue. All right, here we go. Let's go here. Mika Hanna, I think we flip Sanders and Turbo and maybe Justin Hill. Thoughts?
Still skeptical a bit about Justin Hill. I know they're trying. Obviously, they've been trying. They've switched their defense mid-season. Does that help them? It probably is something they can point to. In terms of just how they've used certain guys, but I'm still a little skeptical of that one. But yeah, it's something to watch here down the stretch. I agree that they're going to flip Turbo, and I generally agree. I don't think it's done, but I generally agree that it looks good to flip David Sanders right now.
Mika Hanna, do we land Jacob Weatherspoon in class of 2026?
I do think so. Good relationship with Tim Walton. They were on him really early. Been down here several times just since the summer. It's been several visits. So I do. I think they're in a good spot there. I think he's a really good player. I think he reminds me a little bit of Jordan Hancock. I think that's maybe the role he would be best suited for, but he's a versatile kid. I think he could play a lot of different places in the secondary. So definitely one of the top kids in Ohio. And I like Ohio State very much there.
Wingman Ted, is a medical redshirt a possibility for any of our linemen? With the season extending so far, I don't know if the rules have changed about the majority of season. I'll jump in with what the rule is. You get 4 games. You can play 4 games before you are a counter. But there is a caveat, and it is a large one. Postseason does not count. And the postseason starts with the Big Ten championship game. So you could play 4 games, then sit out the next 8. And I'm not saying it has to be 4 then 8. You can sprinkle them throughout. And Mike Farina will get to your super chat in a second. You get the 4 games during the regular season, and then you can have whatever it is. I mean, hell, it could be 5 more games in there. You could play, 4 games in the CFP, the college football playoff and a conference championship game. So it's not a matter of them trying to be tricky with anybody's eligibility. I mean, they're going to be people who want to see Josh Simmons come back for another year. I don't know if that's necessarily in the cards. I think if Ohio State finishes the season holding up a trophy, I think you're going to see a mass exodus of a lot of people who, are going to have mission accomplished at that point. But, I don't know. I mean, I guess, I would assume that Carson Hinsman is already, I'm trying to think of where he is in terms of his cycle, but, I guess he'd only play 4 games this year. Michigan, Michigan coming up, Indiana, and whatever was Northwestern. Were those the 3? Maybe he played in some spot duty, so maybe he burned whatever year there. But I don't see anybody that you're trying to hold on to that you're like, well, we're just trying to make sure that we work this redshirt rule.
Yeah, and McLaughlin and Simmons, unfortunately, do not fulfill the requirements to take a medical. So that's unfortunately not going to be a factor. Now Simmons has an extra year if he wants it. So he could come back.
Yeah, there's no in the books there. There's no, he has the year. Yeah.
So this is his 4th year. He redshirted. He's got 5 to play 4. So now does he come back? I just don't know what the NFL is going to say. My argument for him to come back would be that, 1, you're going to be, in theory, much healthier for next year's combine, next year's draft. It's going to be another year of experience. And this year's a really good tackle class. And there's a chance next year you could really go high, like really high. I don't think anyone would take him in the top 10 this year, especially coming off the ACL. Do I think it's out of the realm of possibility that if he came back next year and just played the level he was playing before he got injured this year and played throughout the season that way, that he could go in the top 10? I think that's possible. And that's a significant pay increase than if he goes, if he's the 5th or 6th offensive tackle off the board this year, late 1st to mid 2nd, whatever that's going to be. That's a significant increase. And if OSU would be able to come to the table with a really good NIL deal for him for that 1 year to bridge the gap, might be worth it. At the same time, I understand why guys want to get to the NFL as quickly as possible, because the quicker you get to the NFL, the quicker that second contract kicks in. And the second contract is the big one for pretty much everybody. Even the first round picks, the second contract can be the generational wealth type of contract. So we'll see what he does. Would I advise him to think about coming back? Yes, I would. And I'm usually go to the NFL guy. But do I think he's actually going to do that? I'm not so sure. And I think as far as like Ohio State's team, even though he's not going to be playing in the playoffs, I think if Ohio State wins a national championship this year, I don't really see it. I think he would probably just go at that point. But we'll see. Going to be interesting.
Super chat from Mike Farino. While Knowles has pretty clearly won the debate as to stunting and blitzing, I'd argue the results that the last few weeks have proven that Jack Leo is not needed. I mean, I've gone through and I've watched the Indiana game like 1/3 times. I was watching it while Mark messaged me at 2. He's like, "We're doing our 3:00 show, right?" I was like, yeah. But I was watching the game at that point and jotting down some notes. And I really liked the stunting and blitzing that I saw there. I don't know if I've ever really been a huge Jack Leo proponent. I'm not opposed to it. I like to see Ohio State maybe change some things up now and then. I felt that some things had grown very stagnant, but what I saw against IU, I think that it should have put a charge in everybody. IU hasn't given up a lot of sacks this year, gave up 5 sacks to Ohio State. Cody Simon, was playing with his hair on fire. I mean, we saw more out of the ends and everything else. And while there's still going to be a lot of people who are going to gravitate to that first defensive series where Ohio State, once again, couldn't get them off the field and everything else, the rest of the way, save the final drive, Indiana had nothing. And, there are times we throw nothing out there and it's like, oh, by nothing, I mean 185 more yards. I mean, they had nothing until that final drive. So, Mike, I think that I don't disagree with the Jack Leo, aspect of your comment there. That, probably a better question for Ross Fulton than for myself. Mark certainly knows his X's and O's too, so I'll defer.
No, I mean, I think that's a fair take. As it pertains to like Justin Hill, it wouldn't stop me from the Jack or being in the defense or not would not preclude me from recruiting Justin Hill. I think he can do the same things that their defensive ends can do, and I think he can do the same things that Sonny Styles does. So I think you find, even if you don't necessarily have the Jack position, I think you can move him throughout your defense. And I think he's a special player. So I would continue, obviously, to go with that. But I think what they're doing right now is working, obviously. We talked about this in post-game shows. Why aren't they bringing more pressure? They're bringing more pressure now. It's opening up everything else for their defense. Sonny Styles has been freed. He's playing loose and being able to attack more. And I think, again, they're doing all the things I think they needed to do to maximize what they have on defense right now. So hopefully that'll continue for them here these next several weeks.
Larry, how is Michigan getting these recruits with their future not looking good? And I'll just jump in quick and say there's nothing binding about being a commitment at this point. Hell, there's nothing binding about signing at this point. Hell, Julian's saying, he didn't even have a chance to unpack his dorm room before he left because of the Nick Saban departure and everything else. There's no real downside. If you are a top kid and you decommit from Michigan, you're still going to have options, especially with this new world of 105 and everything else. So I don't think you're necessarily hurting yourselves. You're kind of, trying to bet on Michigan maybe not getting nuked into the Stone Age. I don't know to tell you if that's going to happen or not at this point, but I don't see a downside for these kids. I mean, and I think that like the biggest one that probably anybody could talk about is Underwood and that whole situation, which I think is very unique unto itself.
Yeah, I mean, obviously with Underwood, that was just a big NIL offer. Is it actually $12 million? I don't think it is. I think it's closer to like 8 or 8.5, personally, from what I've heard. But there's ways they juice these numbers up and make them sound. It behooves whoever's brokering the deal, and it behooves the player to report to bleed every possible cent out of the reported number. But yeah, it was regardless, very, very, very large NIL deal there. And we've talked about this a lot where I've just said, like, been asked about this on the site several times. Like, it's just like, until the NCAA decides what it's going to do, I don't think anything with Michigan recruiting matters, good or bad. Like, it just doesn't matter, because what's going to happen is if the NCAA crushes Michigan, a lot of that's going to crumble. Maybe not Bryce Underwood and his big money deal, but like a lot of the other stuff can crumble. If nothing happens to Michigan, or very little happens to Michigan that wouldn't, really impact much on the field for the new wave of players they're trying to bring in, they're going to recruit well. So you just have to wait and see what the NCAA is going to do. But as Kevin mentioned, like, nothing's binding. Like, if the NCAA comes in February and says, you guys are done, you're not going to the playoffs for 2 or 3 years, whatever, which is kind of hard for the NCAA to do. They would need like the backing of the CFP because they're not the same entity. So there's also some jockeying there. But if that happens, those guys will do a Julian saying and they will leave. And so nothing good matters right now. Now, if the opposite happens, then they may get back in on some guys, especially for 26. They may get back in on some guys who are maybe on the fence about Michigan. So let's just see what the NCAA does and then kind of go from there.
And it's not like Michigan is telling these kids, well, once we find out our fate, I'm sure they're telling them, hey, we're gold.
Witch hunt.
We're going to be fine. Don't you worry about it. You better get your seat on the bus while you can.
Yep.
And, whether or not you find that to be intellectually honest or dishonest, then, I think that all depends on what color sweatshirt you wear to the games on Saturday. I mean, but it is what it is. And I wouldn't be too concerned about what I see in their recruiting class, as Mark said, because none of it really matters until we know something. And quite honestly, I mean, this could drag out a couple more months, and I think you could still theoretically see people bailing in the spring. I mean, it's just going to be what it is. And if they get hammered, there are going to be some players who are going to be like, I'm not going to sit here for 2 years of bowl bans and 4 years of probation and everything else. I'm going to get the hell out of Dodge. Let me go here to Jeff Frazier. Are you guys hearing anything about Kevin Wilson maybe coming in to help? Now, Kevin Wilson was let go at Tulsa after 2 seasons with the Golden Hurricane. I mean, obviously has a strong relationship at Ohio State, was an assistant under Urban Meyer. I've had some people play the what if game with me on there. I've not heard anything definitive. Just so you know kind of how media availabilities work this week. Monday is Michigan availability up there. Tuesday is Ohio State availability, and that's it. Neither school does anything beyond that. So I have been in a writing cocoon for most of the day, writing tail of the tape, getting Hot 11 ready to run for tomorrow. So I've not talked to anybody, but I don't think it would be the worst thing. I don't think having more voices in the room would be a bad thing. I mean, the voice in the room I want to have is like Urban or somebody like that. It's like, all right, this tough love stuff is all cute and all, but this is, it's time for war. Let's go, let's get after it. And, with what we saw out of Ryan at the end of the Indiana game, punching in that last touchdown, I've seen memes of Dark Ryan. I think we're seeing Dark Ryan right now. So, maybe an idea for our merchandise shop, a little Dark Ryan t-shirt of some sort.
I haven't heard anything definitive about that yet. Obviously, it just kind of happened, but it wouldn't surprise me for like bowl prep or playoff prep, whatever we're going to call it now. Wouldn't surprise me. They like Kevin Wilson is a great offensive line coach. He's very good with the O-line. He's really good with like run schemes. Now, would that mesh with like what Chip wants to do? On top of bringing him in with Justin Fry, I mean, there's a lot of cooks in that kitchen, but I really think Kevin Wilson would add another good voice in terms of run game diversity, help with the O-line, whatever it might be, protections. I don't think it would be a bad idea.
Next one, Terry asking, do we flip anyone away from Oregon? And obviously Dorian Brew, Trey McNutt there. I haven't seen it yet. I'm not watching every question. We haven't had our weekly Jakeem Stewart comment or whatever. I mean, he's certainly somebody who's who's very much in the mix there. SC seems to feel that they're in the mix as well, but I think Terry is really talking about the two DBs.
Yeah, my instinct right now is no. I think if they hit a long shot flip, it'd be Brew and not McNutt. But my instinct right now is probably not. So, but as we said with other situations, 9 days, a lot can happen in these 9 days. A lot of interesting conversations are going to happen these next 9 days around the country.
Yeah, if you would have told me that Julian Lewis was going to decommit from USC and go to Colorado, and I understand Colorado's kind of the flavor of the week and everything else, and with the upcoming departure, Shedeur Sanders and everything else, that it certainly leaves a giant void. But I think we're in store for some major fireworks. I'm not saying specifically Ohio State. I mean, David Sanders flipping to Ohio State would be a gigantic, the biggest, the finale of the fireworks show. But I think nationally we're going to see several more top 100 guys flip. I just do. There's just such the word commitment, and now I'm not speaking of the kids. I want to make sure that's being, that's understood. But I think that the commitments are softer and softer with each passing year, and as each time that things change, and that's fine. I mean, again, we go back 40 years ago, and none of this stuff was reported. I remember as a, maybe not as a kid, but as a college student, getting USA Today the day after National Signing Day to figure out who the hell Ohio State signed, and then trying to figure out who these people were with no internet, really. So that was a challenge, but things are changing. Things are changing. The best damn pod in the land. Curious about how you're feeling about Quincy Porter staying in this class for Ohio State.
Pretty good right now. There's been obviously situations, Neem offered, London Merritt. These are situations that even and Zahir Mathis for most of the summer and fall, and then obviously did decommit. There was some genuine concern there on the Ohio State end, and continues to be for some of these guys. Quincy Porter's a guy that they seem to not be as concerned about flipping. They seem to feel like that one's in a good spot. Again, 9 days, blah, 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 disclaimer, but I that's not a guy that's there's a couple guys higher on that list right now for me that I'm like, yeah, they're going to have to work hard to hold on to. I feel pretty good about them keeping Quincy Porter.
Kenneth, hey guys, talk about my favorite defensive player in 26, Tyler Atkinson. I actually bumped into Tyler and his dad and very nice. They both remembered me, which I was shocked. And and it's like, oh, how's the trip? They flew up. I was like, did you drive or fly? They're like, oh, we flew an hour and a half, no problem. So it was great seeing Tyler, somebody that we've seen around here for quite some time, since the days of him picking up an offer as a rising freshman.
Yep, he's a regular for us on Southern Swing, so be stopping in to see him again here in the spring. But I think he really likes Ohio State. Obviously, Ohio State loves Tyler Atkinson, but I think Tyler really likes Ohio State. I think he really likes the culture. I think they've got a lot of juice, like in Georgia. I think he likes seeing, Caleb Downs be a star and Caden McDonald starting to blossom into one, and just the things they've done with people down there. He's very comfortable around Ohio State, very familiar. They're battling so many SEC teams for him. I think it's going to be super competitive. I think it's going to be one of the most cutthroat recruiting battles of the cycle. I would take the field right now for sure. I think it's more likely than not he stays in SEC country. But if there is a school that can pull him out of SEC country, I think Ohio State's the school that can do it. But this was a good sign, though. This was a good sign to get him back on campus. I also think, again, we're sitting here in November of 2024. Get back to me in November of 2025. I don't know. This is going to be – it may not be crazy like the Neem offered recruitment, but I think it's going to be something that goes well into next season, regardless of anything that happens in the next 10 months. Like, commit somewhere in the spring or summer, like what? Like, I don't think any of that really matters. This is going to be a very, very cutthroat recruitment, and I see it going well into next fall.
I'm trying to stay away from the Michigan questions until now. Here we go. What's your score prediction for the Michigan game? From Larry. I actually sat down and opened up a Word document. I was like, I'm going to start writing my prediction. Then I looked and I saw Monday. I'm like, that's just too damn early. I can't do that. I did give out to some friends my score prediction on Saturday evening. I was like, all right, this is my Saturday evening, non-binding, no research. I mean, and can't say no research. I've watched 11 games of Ohio State, and honestly, I think I've watched 6 of Michigan this year. But I open it up to all of our chatters to get their scores in. I'll put the ones I see up on the screen after I finish my thoughts. But I think I have PTSD over the last 3 years, and I still have seen Ohio State take the better team, at least in 2 of those 3 years into the game, and come up short. And, you can sit there and put some of it at the feet of the defense. They were way too aggressive in the first year that they lost. They were way too conservative in the second year that they lost. I think in the third year was a year of mistakes. The interceptions at that point, offensive linemen getting their legs tangled up, some things along those lines. It's not a case of where Ohio State has just been like completely, just run around the field or whatever. I think that the year in Ann Arbor of the 3 losses was the one that was probably the most, the biggest, chasm between the 2 teams, just because Michigan's like, we know what we can do well and we're just going to do it, and that's just run it right at you. Well, Michigan's not really doing anything all that well on offense right now. And you can sit there and be like, well, Kalel Mullings, well, Donovan Edwards. You're still looking at a team that's middle of the pack nationally in terms of running the ball, who loaded up its stats against a really bad Northwestern team, beating them 50-3. Of course, there are the transitive property people out there. Well, Ohio State did not do that to them. Well, Ohio State also is built differently, played a game technically on the road, even though it was at home at Wrigley Field in a weird configuration. And those transitive property people are not using Indiana or Oregon in any sort of comparison.
Yeah, should I ruin my Friday pick?
I think you can talk around it without giving it.
Well, I am.
I don't know. I don't know your pick, so I don't. I mean, I can't.
I am pick Ohio State. Like, breaking news there. What are they? 24-point favorites right now? Or is it
23.5? I got it at 10 at the start of the season. And I'm pissed I didn't put more on it.
Yeah, I don't know where the offense is going to come from for Michigan. Like, they could put it together a really good defensive effort. They could turn Ohio State over once or twice. Ohio State's going to get to 24. Like, they're going to get to 24. Could get to 34. But I don't know where the path is for Michigan to do that. I reserve the right to be surprised. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time I've been surprised in this game. So we'll see. But the way Ohio State, I think, has figured things out defensively and kind of how they need to play defensively, more so than just the results, but how they need to play. It's going to be a struggle, I think, for Michigan offensively. And I think Ohio State's going to, again, do I think Michigan's going to pull out a couple tricks? Yes. Do I think Michigan's defense is going to perform pretty well? Yeah, I think they're going to give it a great effort and probably make some plays, but I don't see the offense there to win this. You got to have an offense to beat Ohio State. You got to be able to put points on the board to beat Ohio State.
Well, and one more thing too is that there are rumors about the status of Colston Loveland, and if Colston Loveland can't play, even if Colston Loveland can sort of play, he is the linchpin really of that offense. Anything that is not Mullings or Edwards. And Edwards is good because of everything else that goes on around him. And when things aren't good, then he is ineffective. Mullings is a little bit more of a battering ram type of guy. But if they don't have Loveland, Katie bar the door, because Ryan Day already sat there and put up a late touchdown against somebody last week. I don't see him taking the foot off the gas anytime soon against Michigan, especially with the 3 years of crap he's had to hear. Go ahead. I was just punch up. Mika asked the question, so now Jakeem Stewart.
This is the question. I know we've done this every week. This is the question that needs to be asked next Monday. Supposed to be an official visit to Ohio State this weekend. He's going to be on campus all weekend. Ohio State feels they're in it. Ohio State can certainly offer a competitive NIL package. Ohio State can certainly offer an intriguing depth chart, given what they're going to be losing after the season. And I think one thing Ohio State would really love to be able to offer up is like, hey, do you want to go against David Sanders every day in practice for the next 3 years? Because that might be the ultimate iron sharpening iron situation. So we'll stay tuned on that if Sanders either flips or gives an indication that he's going to. But that's this is the weekend. They've got to make their move. They've got to get over that hump, whatever it is, whether it's geography, they've got to kind of settle him down about and talk to him about how, when you're when you're a 7-figure NIL guy, you can fly mom and dad pretty much wherever they want during the season, or we can even, you can even throw, you can get things taken care of in that within those NIL deals, even where it's like, well, I need this, and this for my family. So, all those conversations are going to happen this weekend. All the, hanging out with the team, hanging out around the guys more. We'll see. I think they're right in it. And I just know to be skeptical of LSU always with these Louisiana kids, because we see it a lot. We see it almost every year. We see a big name kid from Louisiana who people think doesn't really love LSU, or maybe doesn't love Brian Kelly or whatever it is, but they still end up there. And it's not that doesn't happen in Ohio. I mean, it's happened in Ohio. Not every kid that ends up at Ohio State from Ohio is like, oh, I just had to go to Ohio State all my life. It's my dream. Some kids feel the pressure to stay home and go to Ohio State, and so they do. So it's not like, it's not the only place this happens, but it happens a lot there. It happens probably more than most places down there. And so I would continue to be a little skeptical of that. And obviously Oregon is a serious factor as well. I can't buy USC right now. I know they think they're still in it. I'm having a hard time buying USC right now. So I tend to think it's one of the other three. But again, we will have plenty to talk about with Jakeem starting on Monday of next week. That will be a big thing the final few days of the cycle.
Rusty Jesse, if Michigan goes 3 tight ends, could we see a 4-4-3 from Ohio State? I hate the 4-4. I hate the 4-4.
I doubt it. I think you've got so many safety guys that can play with the tight ends. You've got Lathan Ransom, Caleb Downs. You could even bring in someone like Malik Hartford. Jordan Hancock's a big physical kid. Like, I don't think they would need to go that drastic.
And I don't know who the 4 linebackers you're playing are in order to, have the diversity out there of, what it is you think that you want out of a 4-4 type of defense. I mean, obviously Cody Simon is playing great. Sonny Styles, has really upped his game. I mean, people want to see more and more Arvell Reese out there. I mean, CJ Hicks, Gabe Powers. I mean, the thing is, like, you just can't throw 4 linebackers out there and say, well, I don't care where you guys fit. Just make it work. I mean, there has to be an upside in it. And, we've seen some 4-4 out of Ohio State in the last 5-7 years. I don't remember a single play where it worked. I don't remember a single play where the 4-4 worked. So I talked about the PTSD of the last 3 years of the Ohio State-Michigan series. I have worse PTSD over the 4-4 because it was like always straight failure. This is a question that I'm posting because I want to ask it to other people. From your boy Jay, Ryan Day still has something to prove, talking about this Michigan series. If Ohio State wins against Michigan, we're just going to close the book right there. We're not going to go into the Big Ten championship game or anything. Right there at that point, will that shut up 100% of the critics, 80% of the critics, 50% of the critics? Does he have to win 2 more? Does he have to sit there and zero out the 3 losses in order for people to give him to cut him some damn slack or not? I mean, and again, you're making $10 million a year as a head coach of one of the most prestigious programs in the nation. I get it. There are not going to be a lot of people who are going to be feeling sorry for you, but if they win this game, will that be enough to get the vast majority of people off his back, or is it going to be something we're going to see for a couple more cycles, or is it something that we're never going to hear the end of because those 3 losses exist in one way, shape, or form in some universe, depending on what the NC2A and the Big Ten ends up ruling down the line?
I think the criticism will. I think I think when you're the coach at Ohio State, you're only as good as your last game. I think any success on Saturday will be celebrated hysterically for a couple of days, and then if they go and get blown out by Oregon and Indianapolis, people are going to want them fired again. That's what I think.
Well, and that's true. I mean, you are as good as your last game, but Ohio State, goes 11-1, 10-2, whatever. I mean, I guess 11-2, and Day doesn't seem to get credit for anything else. Now, I know that at Ohio State, been covering Ohio State for a long time. I understand it's Big Ten champion. It's winning against Michigan, Big Ten championships, national championships. They were in the 2020 national championship game against Alabama. Alabama did not have COVID testing, had no players missing. Ohio State had COVID testing, had like 15 players missing, and then had Trey Sermon get seriously hurt on the first offensive series of the game. But it's a lot. I mean, there's a lot, and I mean, every time I do a show in another market, meaning outside of the state of Ohio, or a national show, there's always a lot of questions of what's Ryan Day's fate. Well, fortunately here, I think Ohio State's going to win the game. Not to spoil my Friday pick, but if that happens, is that going to shut people up for a little bit, or is it just going to be never ending?
I will edit my comment a little bit. If he wins the national championship this year, I think he'll get like a 1-year reprieve, as long as they beat Michigan next year. I feel like if he wins the national championship this year, basically everything next year will kind of be icing on the cake, so long as he also beats Michigan. And then slowly but surely the national championship memory will fade, and it'll be time to bring out the pitchforks if he's not winning another one. But yeah, but other than that, other than like a national championship where a coach seems to get a year or 2 honeymoon, you're only as good as your last game is what it feels like to me for covering the team over the years. But
everybody gets a year or 2 honeymoon except Michigan, which actually seemed to be in worse shape after it won the national championship. I've never seen a team get less of a grace period, a bounce period, or anything else, because
I don't know if I've ever seen a team be so bad coming off a national championship.
Well, that too. Mike Farino, if Ryan Day completely dominates Michigan, 20-point plus win, then beats Oregon the next week, the criticism will almost be dead. I mean, certainly it slays several dragons. And no, not talking drowsy dragon here. It slays the losing the Michigan dragon. It slays the Big Ten championship dragon. It slays another, Ryan Day against top 5 team dragon, even though Ohio State is 2-1 this year against top 5 teams, mind you. But there will be the revisionists who will say, well, Penn State ain't any good, and neither is Indiana. So I agree with what Mike Farino is saying, is that it should do a lot of things. The criticism will almost be dead, but then that would put Ohio State as a 1 because the Big Ten champion is going to be the 1. And if they lose their quarterfinal game, those pitchforks are coming right back out.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it'll be a few weeks of absolute euphoria if that happens. But they better not lose their first playoff game. I mean, that's, it's a first world problem. It's what you come to Ohio State to coach for. But winning the 2 games that you're talking about here only raises the excitement, and with that, the expectations of what they're going to do in the playoffs. And so there's a give and take there of like, okay, yes, you're going to get a lot of credit from the fans. They're going to be ecstatic. But then now it's like, well, you just avenged the Oregon loss, and everyone thinks Ohio State and Oregon are the 2 best teams in the country, so they should win the national championship now. So then it becomes like championship or bust. Once you've won those 2 games, you get the playoffs and you're the 1 seed. So it's a never-ending thing. Urban Meyer talked about it on the Fox show on Saturday. People coming up to him, you went 13-1. What's wrong? It's like, yeah, lost a game, I guess. But it's Urban, I think, nailed it. To me, it's the biggest pressure cooker in college football.
Those poor people in Lincoln, Nebraska are celebrating just being bowl eligible, just getting to 6 wins.
Yep.
I mean, it's different, it's different tax brackets, I would say, when it comes to that. Jimbo Yoder, who is not James Yoder, let's be honest, Day has everything to prove. Tressel won a chip, Urban won a chip. The standard is chips at OSU. Well, I mean, we are also in the platinum era of Ohio State football right now. I mean, maybe not with 3 losses to Michigan. But you go into Ohio Stadium and you look at the north end and you see the national championships listed there. And whether or not you believe 1970 really is a legitimate national championship and everything else, they're not, 25 national championships listed there. They are still a pretty rare thing. Now, Ohio State has had teams. Ohio State should probably have 6 or 7 more national championships, quite honestly, listed up there from the Cooper era on. But you can't control what you can't control. So if your standard is national championships, there's only 1 national champion a year unless UCF declares itself national champion too. So if that is your standard, you're setting yourself up for a lot more disappointment than celebratory moments, because that's a high bar to reach. And again, that's not me trying to foam the runway of me thinking that the team is going to come up short. Obviously, when the team does well, y'all are happy, y'all are super chatting, y'all are signing up for Buckeye Huddle. So that's all good stuff right there. But I think that is a very high standard, and one that's probably a little unrealistic.
Only going to be harder now. Got to win at least 3 playoff games. But I agree that they're the betting favorite right now, and I agree that that needs to be Ohio State needs to strive for national championships. But if the only way you're going to be happy at the end of the season is if you won the national championship, well, then you've been miserable. 45 of the last 47 years or whatever it is. I mean, it's just something that people are going to have to kind of maybe adjust a little bit. Even Saban would not have went on the run he went on if he had to win 3 playoff games to win champion. And I think Saban's ruined a lot of things for a lot of fan bases, just knowing that that what he did over the course of time, it's just not, it's probably not able to be replicated in a 12-team playoff era. So
it shouldn't be that easy. It shouldn't have been that easy, and it sure as hell won't be that easy moving forward with the 12 to 14 to whatever team playoff situation. It's just going to make it more difficult, and I think you're going to see coaches get chewed up and spit out by the grinder more often, because it's going to be a lot. I mean, I will say this before I get to Mellow Super Chat, that for everybody who thought that the 12-team playoff was going to completely make the season irrelevant, I'm sorry, you were wrong. I had my concerns
right now.
I had my concerns. I enjoyed the hell out of watching SEC teams dropping left and right. Yes, no, on Saturday. I mean, I got home from covering the Ohio State Indiana game, sat there, went through. I think generally I get Taco Bell on my way home, which I shouldn't do, but got my Taco Bell and I'm sitting here and I'm watching these games all fall apart. I'm laughing, and because you know what, it's exciting. Now, are we going to have the 12 best teams in the playoff? Absolutely not. Not with some of the requirements, not with having to put a Big 12 team in there, not with having to put a group of 5 team in there. I mean, they could they win a game? Yeah, they could absolutely win a game, but they're not going to be able to run multiple weeks to do anything. That's just not going to happen. I think we're going to see some teams that probably would fit in the top 10 nationally that are going to be out because of whatever the hell it was they did in games. I was really behind Ole Miss, but I also saw when Florida started streaking, I'm like, well, I think Ole Miss might be in trouble. And if it wasn't going to be there, it would have been to Mississippi State in the Egg Bowl because Lane Kiffin has the attention span of a 3-year-old. So I just didn't figure that one was going to happen, but I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying what we've got right there. No, to Jim Bobson, I did not get a gordita. I think I just ordered a la carte because I had soda at home. I think I got a couple of like combo burritos, and I think I got like what else did I get? Some like a Meximelt because it's on the decades menu, and I'm like, well, I better get it before it's gone. And for those of you who enjoy bad fast food, McRib is coming out December 3rd, and you can gift half-gallon jugs of the McRib barbecue sauce.
Oh,
Yeah.
I do. That's my one. Like, I'm not a huge, like, obviously when we're on Southern Swing and stuff, sometimes we don't have a choice, but we stop at fast food places. But I'm not a huge, like, during the week when I'm home, not a huge fast food person. I do enjoy the occasional Wendy's, but my one guilty pleasure is that stupid McRib. It's probably terrible for me. I don't know what's awful in it. Like, but that is my one, like,
oh, it's so good.
But like my thing that like I'm embarrassed to tell people that like I have to get when it comes out is I that's my, so there it is. I hope we're in the trust tree right now. This isn't used against me in the future, but
this is what you do. Is you go and you order a McRib meal and an extra McRib, and you eat 2 of them, and then you hate yourself that you don't go back and get it again during the run.
I don't even do that. I don't even do the meal. I just get 2 McRib sandwiches and call it a day. That's what I take home my McRibs. I'm like, that's my justification. Well, I'm not getting fries, so it's okay if I get 2 McRibs because I'm not going to get the fries.
Well, the fries, I mean, it was so much better when they did it in beef tallow. And, you know, sticking to sports, but maybe we'll get away from oils and get back into beef tallow. And that's McDonald's fries growing up next level, just like Pizza Hut growing up next level. I think I've even said it on one of the shows about Pizza Hut. Is it a matter of that they've gotten crappier, or we've all grown up and our tastes have gotten more refined and everything else? I think both can be true.
Yeah.
Melon number 7, thank you for the super chat. My bold prediction is Ohio State 51, the team up north 9. Now that would be something, and I've seen it in the chat, and I have written my tail of the tape. It is done. I will make adjustments tomorrow if I need to. I always do that. I try to write it early and then adjust as needed. Michigan's field goal kicker is really good. He is 15 of 16. He has 4 or 5 over 50, his long as 56. His miss was from 26. He had a miss from 26. So I think it's much more likely that we see Michigan scoring in multiples of 3. I think they're going to be hard pressed short of Ohio State giving them short fields, or IGB just absolutely melting down out there and committing multiple penalties. I think they're going to be hard pressed to find the end zone unless they're starting a drive inside the 15.
Yeah, that's bold. I don't know. Was that a 4-pointer or whatever? I don't even know the points.
I don't. Tom and Tony don't invite me to their little reindeer games. I had to create my own prediction series for that. Matthew Miller, Day will run the score up on Michigan. Watch, it'll be a bloodbath. No one cares if they play a 500 team or an undefeated team. This arse whipping was coming since offseason moves, players to coaches crying, but TTUN. I mean, I think I don't think an absolute butt whooping is out of the question. I really don't. This isn't going to be the level of what 2020 could have been. I think Michigan also is going to see that the best way to keep Ohio State in the stratosphere is by not letting the Ohio State offense out there on the field. And that's not saying that Michigan's going to be able to extend a lot of drives, but I think that you're going to see Michigan do what Northwestern and some other teams with bad offenses did, and that's try and limit the amount of series. But I think that you are going to see an Ohio State team, and I haven't talked to them this week yet. I haven't talked to anybody. That's tomorrow, but they seem ready. Jack Sawyer, post-game from Indiana, seemed ready. All of the player interviews we had, they all seemed like they were ready. Now, is Ryan Day going to put It's Time for War on in the Woody 24/7? He hasn't yet. I don't know why it would start now, but Dark Ryan needs to stay here all week.
Yeah, I see a team that's now come to the point where this is why, again, they've said it, this is why they came back. And so it's going to be about execution on Saturday. There's not a doubt in my mind that they're not going to be ready emotionally. They're not going to be up for this. It's going to come down to execution and channeling that. You can almost want something too bad and you kind of screw it up by trying too hard. Like if they can channel that properly, I think it's going to be a good day for Ohio State on Saturday.
I do. I think it will. And, wouldn't it be something if this game were firmly in hand by halftime and everybody could start tracking down their Indianapolis reservations? And let me warn you, it's expensive. I've already booked our hotel, and it's south of the city because even the media hotel was about $300 a night after parking. Yeah, so Mark is happy to hear that I booked something a lot cheaper than that on the south end of the city. We will stay out of downtown Indianapolis. We will stay out of St. Elmo and all of these things that none of us really can afford to do with the holiday season here, and potentially 3 weeks of bowl games.
Right. We keep getting there, though. It's like Indianapolis is like almost a second home at this point with all the stuff we do down there.
It really is. It really is. I'm about caught up, but let me get this one in from Shuttle Joe. He's had a lot of comments. This was the one I saved. The fans treated Urban Meyer like God. You are wrong. Most fans don't feel this way. Just some of the media and 5% of the fan base. Because, I think it's a thing of where there was an argument of that Urban Meyer did not have this type of criticism, and then people were like, well, he also went 7-0 against Michigan and this, that, and the other. But you know what Urban Meyer did? Lost to Purdue, lost to Iowa, and neither of those losses were particularly close. And I'm not anti-Urban by any stretch of the imagination. I liked Urban because you knew exactly where you stood with him, and I appreciate that. I respect the hell out of that. You knew if he was pissed at you, or if he even knew who you were, because a lot of times, he was very in his own world. So I don't know if he was ever pissed at me because he probably barely knew my name, even though I talked to him multiple times, asked him plenty of questions. But I think Ryan, as the successor, the handpicked successor, there was no coaching search. There was no chance to go out and get the sexy name at that point or whatever. I think he already was dealt a little bit of a hand like that. And people don't remember that Ohio State won games in the rivalry game prior to 2021. If the 2020 game happens, Jim Harbaugh probably quits. He probably quits after that year because, the stretch of losses has grown to a certain point. So COVID saved Harbaugh in a lot of ways in my mind. It really created a backlog of players to create, rosters that were very senior laden, very bought into a system that, might not work everywhere else in 21 and 22. And then I still have no explanations for 23. I really don't.
I'm going to push back on fans treated Meyer like a god. I remember very vividly defending Urban Meyer late 2013, early 2014, when half the fan base was saying, we got watered down Urban Meyer. We didn't get the Florida version of Urban Meyer after losing to Michigan State in the Big Ten championship game. We get smoked by Virginia Tech at home. Then he wins the national championship. This is the life cycle of an Ohio State coach. Crazy pressure until you win a national championship. You win a national championship, you get a little bit of a reprieve for a year or two. Then crazy pressure from that point forward until if you win another one. And then when you're gone, everyone looks back fondly on you. That's how this happens. People were very critical of Urban early in his tenure. People were incredibly critical of Urban late in his tenure. They hated the Purdue and Iowa losses. 31-0 to Clemson was like, people were ready to like put Urban out to pasture. Like, so no, I don't think they treated him like a god at all while he was coaching, save that little run there in 14, because again, most people were writing them off from even making the playoff that year. So, you know, it was watered down Urban. We didn't get Florida Urban. We got the watered down, you know, weak version of Urban until he won the championship. Then he won the championship and everyone was fine. And then they went nuts because he didn't repeat with that roster. And then they lose to Clemson 31-0. And everyone's like, well, we got the, you know, now he's over the hill and this, that, and the other. Now they look back on him and treat him like a god. Now they do. And the same thing happened with Tressel. People were like the Tressel offense and entering the 21st century, and people love Tressel. But it's much different while they're actually coaching. And even John Cooper gets treated a lot better after his coaching days are over. It's every coach. And so I don't buy that everyone was just like great with Urban the entire time, because I had vividly was in conversations like defending certain things about him or saying people were being unreasonable about certain things, certain criticisms. So I don't know. Maybe we just do. Maybe just with what we do for a living, we get a larger percentage of the vocal minority. Maybe that's possible. I don't know.
Oh, it is.
But the idea that like there was no pressure on Urban and that everything was just great for Urban the entire time he was at Ohio State, I think is revisionist history. But
yeah, so you know, you look at it, and it's when you're dealing with a coach week in and week out, you sit there and you pick out every little, you know, little crack in the wall and wart and whatever. And then when the coach has been away for a couple of years, you remember the high points and, oh yeah, there were some low points, but I remember the high points. That's just how it's going to work out. But you know, I think we're still going to have to see, you know, to the earlier point of, you know, this program is measured in chips or whatever. Yeah, if Ryan Day wins the national championship this year, especially with the $20 million number being put out and everything else, I think that's going to go a long way. But then the argument's going to be, well, if he would have gotten his bleep put together sooner, we'd have 2 or 3 under him. And, you know, the next year, if they go 11-1, I mean, you know, it's a never ending cycle. And again, it's what you get there. And Mark talking about, you know, maybe we get a little bit more of the vocal minority, and we certainly do, because y'all are fantastic. We get on a show at 3:00 on a Monday afternoon, 3 Eastern, 12 Pacific, depending on where you are. And you're here to talk college football. You guys are the power users. You guys are the hardcore users. You guys are the people that sign up to Buckeye Huddle, or should sign up to Buckeye Huddle. And, you know, you are very different than, you know, Marge over at the barber shop who cuts your hair, who, you know, has a couple Ohio State sweatshirts, but, you know, doesn't really live and die with every single thing that's going on. Those of you who do live and die with every single little thing that's going on, you make all this possible. So we thank you.
Yeah, I think even Urban would be a little bit taken back by treated like a god while at Ohio State after his speech on Saturday about Ohio State being the ultimate pressure cooker in the country. And I think he was dead on about it. Now, there's a lot of good that comes from that, obviously, as we've seen by Ohio State's almost unprecedented streak here, like the last 25 years. Like if Ryan Day keeps this up for another 6 or 7 years, I think you're pretty much looking at like the most consistently great 30-year run in the history of college football, if you look at it. Now, hopefully for Ohio State, that includes another national championship or two. But there are so few instances of a program being as good as they are every year, like for 3 decades. Like it is, I mean, you got like Bowden had a run at Florida State, Saban obviously at Alabama, but even that's a 15-year run at Alabama? It's not a 30-year run. You know,
you look at pre-Saban.
Right.
And we're looking kind of at post-Saban, and I'm not ready to close up shop there, but pre-Saban, they went through some jokers.
Oh, yeah. It was a hard decade or two before Saban. So, like, what Ohio State's doing right now is, and this is partially fueled by the pressure that is put on the administration and the coaches by the fan base. I don't deny that at all. But it is like, it's unique. It's not something we've seen a lot. And I think in an era where it's almost harder right now than ever with the transfer portal and NIL and everything, and they've kept it going at that 11 wins a year type of thing. It's just 11 plus wins a year. It's just, I think people need to, I mean, Chris Hersey, you even count Cooper's record, especially like from like 94, 95 on. Like, I know we had the 2 bad years before he got fired and Tressel took over, but like the amount of
the 2 South Carolina bowl games.
Yeah. Like, but like, 95, they were 95, 96, 97, 98. Like those were great years. So this has been like a 30-year thing right now that, again, it's not been done very often in the sport. And I think people need to at least, during the game and like right after the game, you're going to be like really upset about certain things, but like maybe like in the middle of the week, be like, man, it's been a good 30-year run to be an Ohio State fan. We haven't had a Mike Shula. We haven't had a Brady Hoke, a Rich Rod. We haven't had a Ty Willingham. Like it's been pretty good.
6, 7, and 1, or 6 and 7 in 2011 is the low water mark of all of that until we get back into like Coop's final year or something like that. I mean, but 6 and 7, and an ill-advised decision to go play in the Gator Bowl against Florida. But I've said my piece on that one 100 million times, and we said, "Oh, we're going to try and keep this show capped to an hour," and we're a little over an hour 15. So. There you go.
I got it. So we will go ahead and probably log off here. Like I said, I've got some stuff to write up at the site from the recruiting weekend. I have posted a Skull Session column on Sunday night, last night. If you guys want to check that out, but I'll have some updated stuff here this evening. We'll have coverage, of course, throughout the week of the upcoming game. And so stay tuned for all of that coverage, both here on the YouTube channel at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle and also on the website at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Great time to sign up, $4.99 for your first month. And like when else would you sign up if not this week? Like huge game coming up, the possibility of a revenge game with Oregon in 2 weeks, and the playoffs starting in a month. Like that's like your first month on the site. You get to come. Look, this could be one of those historic runs for Ohio State, and you can come enjoy it with a whole bunch of other Ohio State fans in our community, and we'll be chatting about this game all week. We'll be chatting about the next game after that, which hopefully will be the Big Ten championship game. But just a great time to be on the site, and a great time to interact with fellow Ohio State fans. So thanks everyone again for joining us this afternoon. Thanks for watching. Thanks for those who are listening in podcast form. And we won't see you next Monday. We'll see you before then. We got some other stuff cooking. We got some recorded podcasts to bring to you for some things. And so we'll see you soon.